Imagine a place so tragic and haunting that it became the epicenter of over 1,000 desperate souls' final moments. A single act of despair sparked an unimaginable wave of imitative suicides. This is the story of Kyoko Matsumoto, a 19-year-old student whose life ended in the fiery depths of Mount Mihara in 1933. Her tragic decision and the taboo love that drove her there shook Japan to its core and created a dark legacy that still echoes today. Welcome to our deep dive into the heart-wrenching story of Kyoko Matsumoto, set against the backdrop of a militarized and nationalistic 1930s Japan, a time when societal pressures, rigid gender roles, and forbidden love created an environment of unbearable emotional strain. Her story doesn't end with her death. Kyoko's final act led to a horrifying trend, with over 1,000 people following her into the volcano's deadly embrace. What drove so many to this drastic measure? In this video, we will explore the societal and cultural environment that led to Kyoko's tragic decision, delve into her personal struggles and forbidden love, and examine the aftermath that saw a shocking number of copycat suicides. We'll also draw parallels to today's societal pressures and the ongoing importance of mental health awareness. Stick around, because this is a story that will stay with you long after the video ends. Let's get started. Circumstances. The 1930s in Japan was a period marked by intense nationalism, militarization, and social upheaval. Following the Meiji Restoration of the late 19th century, Japan rapidly modernized and sought to establish itself as a major world power. This era was characterized by aggressive imperial expansion, economic challenges due to the Great Depression, and a shift towards militaristic governance. The government promoted the ideology of kokutai, emphasizing loyalty to the emperor and the nation, which permeated all aspects of society, including education and gender roles. The rise of militarism in Japan brought about a rigid, authoritarian social structure. Young people were expected to embody the values of loyalty, obedience, and self-sacrifice for the nation. The state controlled many aspects of daily life, fostering a sense of duty and subservience to the national cause. Military training was incorporated into the school curriculum, and students were taught to prioritize national interests above personal aspirations. Not just militarism, education was heavily influenced too by nationalistic ideologies. The curriculum emphasized moral education, loyalty to the emperor, and preparation for military service. Students faced immense pressure to succeed academically and conform to these ideals. Failure to perform well in school could result in severe consequences, both socially and economically. The competitive environment, coupled with the rigid expectations of conformity, created a high-stress atmosphere for students. Women were expected to adhere to traditional roles as homemakers and supporters of their husbands during that time. The societal expectations for women were restrictive, limiting their opportunities and placing significant emotional and social pressures on them. Women were often educated in ryosai kenbo, good wife, wise mother, principles, which emphasized domestic skills and subservience to male authority. This cultural framework severely restricted women's autonomy and career opportunities, leading to feelings of frustration and helplessness. During that time, Kyoko Matsumoto was a 19-year-old student from Akita Prefecture. She was part of a generation grappling with the immense societal pressures of the time. As a young woman, she would have been subjected to the dual burdens of academic pressure and restrictive gender expectations. Suicidal aspiration, Kyoko Matsumoto had developed an infatuation with a fellow student named Masako Tomita. In 1930s Japan, lesbian relationships were considered highly taboo and unacceptable. This societal rejection of her feelings for Masako added a significant emotional strain to her already burdened life. The stigma associated with her sexual orientation would have further isolated her, leaving her with few avenues for support or understanding. The intense emotional and societal pressure from her unaccepted love likely played a crucial role in her decision to end her life. That wasn't the only aspirations to kill herself. Like many young people of her era, Matsumoto likely had educational aspirations that were difficult to fulfill due to the rigid and demanding educational system. The intense pressure to perform academically, combined with the limited opportunities for women, would have created a challenging environment for her. Matsumoto, as a young woman, faced the added pressure of conforming to traditional gender roles, which could have conflicted with any personal ambitions she had for independence or a career. The expectation to become a good wife and wise mother would have been at odds with any aspirations she had for a more autonomous life. The combination of educational demands and societal expectations likely created a significant emotional burden. The intense scrutiny and lack of support for mental health issues during this time would have exacerbated her struggles. Her feelings of isolation and the taboo nature of seeking help would have compounded her sense of despair. Due to all these societal chains and unaccepted love, on January 12, 1933, Kyoko Matsumoto made the tragic decision to end her life by jumping into the open mouth of the active volcanic crater of Mount Mihara on the island of Izu Oshima. Only Kyoko jumped, ending her life in the lava pit's hellish temperature of 1,200 degrees Celsius. Her suicide caused a sensation and prompted thousands of imitators. This act was a stark manifestation of the overwhelming pressures she faced and highlighted the desperate need for addressing mental health issues. Aftermath and wave of copyright suicides. In the remainder of 1933, another 143 followed Miss Matsumoto into the crater, and on one day alone, there were 6 successful suicides and 25 unsuccessful attempts. In the next year, the volcano claimed another 167 lives. So great was public interest that boatloads of tourists flocked to the island. Visitors could dine at the coastal restaurants, take a camel ride to the top of Miharayama, and, on a good day, witness a suicide or two. In total, 1,208 people attempted suicide in 2 years before a barrier was erected around the crater, and it was made a criminal offense to purchase a one-way ticket to Oshima. Continuing legacy, Matsumoto's suicide was a shocking event that drew public attention to the plight of students and the pressures they faced. Her death became a symbol of the detrimental effects of societal and educational pressures on young people. The dramatic nature of her suicide, coupled with the taboo subject of her romantic feelings, sparked widespread media coverage and public discourse. Her death sparked a conversation about the mental health of students, an issue that had been largely neglected in the public discourse. The tragedy of her suicide forced society to confront the reality of the pressures faced by young people and the lack of support systems in place to help them. There were calls for educational reforms to alleviate the intense pressures on students and create a more supportive learning environment. These discussions highlighted the need for a more balanced approach to education, one that prioritized the mental and emotional well-being of students alongside academic achievement. The incident highlighted the need for better support systems for young people, including counseling and mental health services. Efforts were made to provide more resources for students struggling with emotional and psychological issues, although progress was slow and met with resistance from traditionalists. Modern-day relevance. Her story does not end there. Matsumoto's story remains relevant today as societies continue to grapple with issues of mental health, educational pressures, and gender roles. Her tragic fate serves as a reminder of the importance of creating supportive environments for young people and addressing mental health issues proactively. Efforts to mitigate the copycat suicide. Despite numerous efforts by Japanese authorities and local organizations to discourage suicides at Mount Mihara, the tragic trend persists. Barriers, surveillance cameras, and crisis hotlines have been put in place to deter those contemplating self-harm, but the mountain's accessibility and the psychological complexities leading to suicide make it a challenging problem to fully address. The overwhelming number of deaths at Mount Mihara has sparked debates about mental health care, societal pressures, and the need for empathetic support systems in Japan. While efforts to address these concerns are ongoing, the dark legacy of Mount Mihara as a symbol of despair continues to haunt the collective consciousness of the nation.